Good morning to you. One of the ways of listening to the words of Jesus is from the viewpoint of Jesus as our creator. To be specific, looking at Jesus as one of our creators, makers, and framers, formers. Let me explain this unusual and significant perspective. In Genesis 1, the writer tells the story of the creation. Beginning with the first verse, the declaration is made, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." There follows the creation of the various parts of the universe, or galaxy, if you will. And then in verse 26, these words tell the story of the creation of man. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness." Notice the plural pronouns being used, our image and our likeness. God and who? God and who else? We are given an answer in the opening verses of John's Gospel. Listen to John's description of Jesus coming into the world. Quote, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being." Then later in verse 14, John declares, "And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory of a Father's own Son, full of grace and truth." Jesus and God, co-creators of the universe, our galaxy, our world, and us. Jesus had a part in designing us, planning us, putting us together. Really? Does that put a different light on Jesus' teachings, on Jesus' sermons, on Jesus' ministry and mission, on Jesus' healings, on Jesus' use of his power? Let's pursue that idea and apply it to what we hear Jesus saying in specific. But let me first be clear about what I'm suggesting to you. In hearing Jesus' teachings, sermons, and parables, we are privileged to hear words from the very one who created us, who knows how we were put together, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. When Jesus speaks to us about God's love and his love, he is telling us those things that are the very best for us. And his perspective is, I helped in creating you. I know what is good for you from every vantage point, every perspective, and I'm always going to tell you what is the very best for you. For example, in the Sermon on the Mount, found in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, there is contained for us an advice in many areas as to the very best way of our living. In Matthew 6, 1 and following, Jesus tells us, quote, "You need to be aware," unquote. Hear the warning words of Jesus? Beware of practicing your piety before others in order to be seen by them. My translation of his words are, beware of doing your religion before people. Why does he warn us? Because we will begin to attempt to do our religious activities for two reasons. One, in our worship of God, and the other, to impress people. We will be trying to live a divided life. We will be bringing our gift with our eyes on God, while at the same time looking over our shoulder and around to see who might be watching us doing our worshiping of God. Jesus then carries his advice into a very important area of our religion, our prayer life. Again, Jesus' advice is about a possible dual or divided religious activity. Praying to God and just perhaps doing our prayer in order to be seen or be heard by some people nearby. Getting credit from both sides of the activity, both God and people. And from God's perspective, be aware that God really does know both what you are doing and why you are doing it. You're not fooling God. Please don't try and fool yourself. In chapter 5 of the sermon, Jesus gives some very challenging but extremely helpful advice about relationships and especially about revenge. Remember, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, and in verse 41, he tells us, if anyone forces you to go with him 1 mile, go with him 2. The reason? Hear Jesus' advice from the standpoint of his being our creator, designer, and maker. Don't give your power away to anyone. Don't let how the person has treated you determine the way you feel you must treat them. I have created you with the power to choose for yourself who you want to be and how you will live. Don't give that power away to anyone else. Beloved, let me invite you to always listen to Jesus' teaching, advice, sermons, messages, and his words, as if he were saying to you, looking at you just straight in the eye, I want you to live the happiest life that you can possibly have, and I am telling you these things so that you can have a blessed life. Hear, listen, and follow what I'm saying to you because I love you, and please know that my Father loves you too. Have a great, blessed, loving day.